Welcome to NFL Talk.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Liam. And we love to really get into the most exciting games each week.
Yeah.
Today, we are breaking down a game that really shook things up in the AFC North. Bengals versus Raiders.
Oh, this one had everything. Offense, defense, and big momentum shifts. The Bengals got a big win, 41-24.
Yeah.
Finally, their first home win of the season, and they're now 4-5 after starting 0-3.
You could really feel the energy change in Cincinnati. But, the Raiders, they didn't just lie down. They came out strong, putting up points right away with that Zamir White touchdown run.
It was like a statement. But the Bengals, they didn't panic. What really impressed me was how they answered a methodical 8-minute drive that showed just how versatile Chase Brown is. He wasn't just running the ball. He was a threat as a receiver, too. Even got a touchdown.
Yeah, it was like the drive set the tone for the whole Bengals offense.
Oh.
And speaking of setting the tone, we got to talk about that Max Crosby penalty.
Yeah.
Come on. Taking out Burrow after jumping offside. You could say that moment alone flipped the whole game.
Absolutely. A total gift to the Bengals, and they took advantage. But even beyond that penalty, the Bengals' offensive line deserves some credit. They gave Burrow time to work something we haven't seen consistently this season.
It's like something clicked. Burrow was on fire, tying his career high with 5 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
You can't ignore that pick 6, but man, he was focused 27 of 39 for 251 yards. Those are the stats of a quarterback in control.
And it wasn't just the numbers. It was the timing, the accuracy. He was hitting receivers perfectly, exploiting those holes in the Raiders' secondary. This wasn't just throwing and hoping for the best. This was calculated dissection.
And we can't forget about Mike Gesicki on the receiving end of some of those throws. 100 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, including a huge one right after a Raiders turnover. He was a difference maker.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Talking about difference makers, though, we can't talk about the Bengals' success without mentioning Trey Hendrickson. That guy was unstoppable on the defensive line. 4 sacks, 7 quarterback hits. The Raiders' O-line just had no answer.
He was everywhere, disrupting plays before they even got started. You could see the Raiders getting frustrated. It wasn't just the physical pressure. It was knowing he was coming for them on every play.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how much of the Raiders' struggles on offense were because of Hendrickson and how much was just them being inconsistent. I mean, Gardner Minshew didn't exactly impress before being benched in the third quarter.
Yeah, he only completed 10 of 17 passes for a measly 124 yards. Not what you want to see from your quarterback. Bringing in Desmond Ridder didn't really change things either.
No, it didn't. The Raiders were definitely dealing with some injuries.
Yeah.
Losing key players like that definitely messed with their flow. But even with that, it felt like they were missing something on offense, like they didn't have a real identity.
Yeah, there were moments of brilliance, but it never felt like they were really in sync, almost like they were playing not to lose instead of playing to win.
You know, that's a really good point. It lacked that sense of urgency, that hunger that you saw from the Bengals, especially after those early momentum swings.
So we've talked about the good stuff for the Bengals and the struggles for the Raiders, but let's dig into some of those key moments, those turning points that really shaped this game.
Yeah, let's break it down.
All right, so picture this. The Raiders score on their first drive, and everyone's thinking, here we go. This is going to be a shootout.
Yeah.
But then the Bengals come back with that methodical 8-minute drive we talked about. Chase Brown is making plays, the offensive line is holding strong, and suddenly the energy shifted.
It was like a clinic on how to control the pace of the game. Totally took the wind out of the Raiders' sails, and then just when the Raiders are starting to get back on their feet, bam, that Crosby penalty, it was like letting the air out of a balloon.
Right. The Bengals get a touchdown off of it, and you could see the doubt creeping into the Raiders' sideline. But they weren't done yet. Mike Gesicki grabs that crucial touchdown after the Raiders' turnover.
Yeah.
And now it's a 2-score game going into halftime. The momentum is clearly on the Bengals side.
And it really never went back, did it? The Bengals came out firing in the second half, and the Raiders just couldn't keep up.
All right, so let's talk about the individual performances that fueled this win. Chase Brown, he was a revelation, wasn't he? Stepping in for Zach Moss and putting up those numbers, 120 rushing yards, a receiving touchdown. That's a statement.
Yeah, it was. And it wasn't just the stats. It was the way he ran decisive, powerful, elusive. He brought an energy to the Bengals running game that we haven't seen much of this season. He kept the Raiders defense guessing, and that opened things up for the rest of the offense.
Yeah, it's like he gave their playbook a whole new dimension. But let's not forget about the guy who was causing chaos on the other side of the ball. Trey Hendrickson, 4 sacks, 7 quarterback hits. Those are video game numbers.
He was unstoppable, constantly in the backfield, messing with the Raiders' passing game, forcing them to rush their throws. He single-handedly changed the feel of that game.
It's like he was playing chess and the Raiders were playing checkers. His positioning, his energy, his ability to anticipate the snap, it was a masterclass in pass rushing.
You could see the impact on the Raiders' offensive line. They were clearly frustrated, making mistakes, missing assignments. It was like a domino effect that led to their downfall.
So we've talked about the key moments, the big performances, the swings in momentum. But what does this all mean for the Bengals moving forward? They've got a tough game coming up against the Ravens on a short week, and we know how tough Baltimore can be at home.
It's going to be a fight, no doubt. But if the Bengals can keep this momentum going, if they can get that same level of production from Brown and Hendrickson, if their offensive line keeps protecting Burrow, they've got a shot.
And don't forget about Burrow. He's playing with confidence, making good decisions, spreading the ball around. This Bengals team is starting to click. And that's a dangerous thing in the AFC North.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? This game wasn't just about the Bengals winning. It also showed some weaknesses in the Raiders. Their offensive line problems go beyond just injuries. They need to figure out how to run the ball consistently and protect their quarterback, whoever that may be, if they want to turn their season around.
Their bye week is coming at a good time. They need to use it to get healthy, regroup, and figure out who they are on offense. Because right now, they're a team searching for answers.
That's a perfect way to put it. So as we move on to the next part of our deep dive, we want you to think about this. Do you think the Bengals won more because of their own strengths or because of the Raiders' weaknesses? Or was it a bit of both? Keep that in mind as we take a closer look at the strategies and individual performances that shaped this important AFC North matchup. Okay, so let's rewind a little and focus on some specific decisions that might have made the difference. Remember that Raiders scoring drive in the first quarter, they moved right down the field with a strong running game. For a moment, it looked like they had the Bengals on the ropes.
Oh, yeah. It felt like they were setting the pace, controlling the line. You'd think they'd stick with that run-heavy approach.
Right. But then they kind of just abandoned it, going for more passes. It was like they lost faith in what was working, trying to be too clever instead of sticking with the plan.
And that played right into the Bengals' hands. Cincinnati's defense, especially that front seven, they love to force turnovers and get to the quarterback. The more the Raiders threw the ball, the more chances they gave Hendrickson and the guys to make big plays.
It's like they didn't realize how much of an impact Hendrickson was having. It wasn't just the sacks, it was the pressure he created. Those rushed throws. The whole Raiders offense was thrown off.
You know what else is interesting? The way the Bengals changed their defense during the game. Early on, they were blitzing a lot, trying to rattle Minshew and force mistakes. But as the game went on, they started dropping more guys back into coverage, daring Minshew to make throws into tight spaces. It was risky, but it worked.
It was a gamble, for sure. But it shows they're adapting and trusting their secondary more than we've seen before. They saw that Minshew was struggling with accuracy, especially under pressure, and they used it perfectly.
And on offense, the Bengals seemed to find a good balance. We've been talking about Chase Brown's breakout game, but it's important to see how him stepping up helped the rest of the offense. It wasn't just giving him the ball and letting him run. It was using him as a weapon, both running and catching the ball.
Exactly. His ability to catch passes out of the backfield, to line up in the slot, to make defenders miss, it caused so many problems for the Raiders. It forced them to respect the Bengals' running game, which then opened up chances for Burrow to find those mismatches downfield, like a chain reaction.
And let's not forget those turnovers. The Raiders fumbled the ball 3 times, and the Bengals turned those mistakes into 17 points. That's a killer in any game, especially when you're already struggling to score.
Turnovers can really kill your momentum. It's that simple. And they often show a bigger problem: lack of discipline, lack of focus, lack of execution. You could say those turnovers were a sign of the Raiders' problems throughout the game.
It felt like they kept tripping over themselves. A dropped pass, a blown assignment, a bad penalty. They just couldn't get out of their own way.
And that's the difference between a team that's clicking and a team that's still figuring things out. The Bengals were playing with confidence, with purpose, with a clear understanding of their strengths. The Raiders, on the other hand, seemed unsure of themselves, hesitant, almost like they were waiting for something bad to happen.
It's crazy how quickly momentum can change in football. 1 minute, you're feeling good, controlling the game, and the next, you're scrambling, making mistakes, and watching it slip away.
And it goes back to those key moments, those turning points we've been talking about. Think about that Crosby penalty. It wasn't just giving the Bengals a first down. It was like a shot of energy for them and a punch in the gut for the Raiders. It was a snapshot of the whole game. One team making the most of their chances, the other letting them slip away.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's think bigger. We've looked at the key moments and analyzed the players and talked about the strategies. But what does this game tell us about the Bengals as contenders?
That's the big question, isn't it? They're 4-5, they're starting to find their groove, and their schedule looks good. But can they keep this up? Can they handle the tough times ahead? Can they prove this win wasn't just a fluke against a weak Raiders team?
Those are the questions we'll be asking as we watch them face the Ravens on Thursday night.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this next game so interesting. Will the Bengals keep rising, or will the Ravens show their flaws and bring them back down?
It's a real test for the Bengals. If they can go into Baltimore and win, it'll show everyone they're a real threat.
But if they stumble, if they go back to how they were playing at the start of the season, it'll make people wonder if they can really hang with the best in the AFC. So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, keep this in mind. Are the Bengals ready to take that next step and become a real contender? Or are they still a work in progress, a team with potential, but not quite there yet? All right, so we've really broken down this game, haven't we? Looked at the big plays, the turning points, the decisions that helped Cincinnati win. But when we step back and look at the bigger picture, the question is, where do the Bengals go from here?
That's what makes this Ravens game so interesting. It's not just about the division. It's about whether the Bengals are real contenders. Can they take this energy, this confidence, and turn it into a win against a powerhouse like the Ravens?
And on a short week, no less Thursday Night Football in Baltimore, against a Ravens team that wants to prove they're still the top dog in the North. It's going to be intense.
Oh, yeah. If the Bengals want to win, they need to do what worked against the Raiders. Establish that run game early. Give Chase Brown those chances to make plays both running and catching. It'll keep the Ravens' defense honest and open up those play-action opportunities for Burrow.
And Burrow, he can't afford those rookie mistakes like that pick six against the Raiders. He's got to be sharp, decisive, and protect the ball, especially against a Ravens defense that's known for creating turnovers.
And the Bengals' offensive line, they have to be at their best. We saw how important it was to protect Burrow against the Raiders. Against the Ravens with their pass rush, it'll be even more important.
And we can't forget about containing Lamar Jackson. We all know what he can do when he gets going. It's going to take a team effort to keep him under control.
Trey Hendrickson can't do it all himself like he did against the Raiders. He'll need help from the other guys up front to put pressure on Jackson, and the Bengals secondary better be ready because Jackson can make you pay if you give him any space.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we're left with a lot of questions. Are the Bengals ready to step up and compete with the best? Or was that win against the Raiders just a fluke, a glimpse of potential that hasn't been realized yet?
Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure. This Thursday night game against the Ravens is huge for the Bengals. It's a chance to prove everyone wrong, to show they're not just pretenders, they're contenders. We can't wait to see what happens.
That's what makes the N.F.L. so great, isn't it? The storylines, the way teams change, the moments that make seasons and careers. We'll be back next week to break down another exciting matchup, to look at the strategy and get inside the minds of the players and coaches who make this game so amazing.
Until then, keep those debates going, keep making those predictions, and keep that passion for the game burning bright.
Goodbye, and see you in the next video.
Goodbye.